All right, so hello and welcome to Musical Exploring Music with Kalyani. This episode is very special, and I said it thrice because it's the third anniversary of Musical. So, in 2019, when the channel was started, it was started with a particular aim in mind, which was basically to relate the Indian music to our real lives. Uh, and the guest that we have today is someone who has brought this connection so close to each other that she has actually researched on something where the Indian classical music meets your emotions. Now, according to me, the the thing which is the closest to any human being is how we feel. And the guest that we have today is someone who has researched for the longest time on how humans feel. And being trained in classical music herself, she also has an understanding of the musicality, and she has researched on relating that with the human emotions and more. Uh, Today's guest is Dr. Nandini Chatterjee Singh. Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
And just to introduce Dr. Nandini Chatterjee Singh, she is working with the National Brain Research Center at Haryana, Manesar. And she has published two papers, which is actually what got me to get in touch with her, because the papers which she has written are very interesting. And when I read them, my first reaction was, this is too good to be true. So I thought of, asking you whether you would be, whether you would like to, talk about this on musical, where we have viewers from all backgrounds, where we have viewers from all spheres of life, and where we believe in relating this music to the real life. So most welcome on musical again, and thank you once again for accepting this invitation.
Well, to be honest, Kalyani, the honor is all mine. The fact that there's somebody actually interested in the research that we do in the laboratory is something that is always very flattering for a scientist. Okay, because often the objective of studying something is more technical or could get a little personal also in terms of trying to understand the science behind it. But increasingly, we have all begun to realize the value of relating science to reality, or to the common man. And I completely agree there that music is probably one of the greatest attractors there. It's as in the scientific language, we often say that is why music is even more powerful than language, because it is universal. And languages might vary in terms of communication, but music is something that reaches everybody and is a far more universal language that way. So I'm very excited and looking forward to this conversation. Just to add a little point of clarification, my training in music is very minimal. Okay, like all children growing up in a Bengali home, you have to learn music. It's part of the growing up culture, and so I spent a little bit of time learning to play the sitar, and a short while learning vocal music. But I've been in a very rich cultural milieu. My father had and still has more than 5,000 records at home, LPs. And one of the things I remember doing as a child is working with him late at night, even though there was school the next day, helping him solder different resistors and capacitors because he built his speakers at home. Okay, so we were encouraged to not only enjoy music but to also participate in making sure we listen to good music. So as you know, this is often discussed, तानसेन बनना है या कानसेन बनना है. तो थोड़ा थोड़ा हमने बनने की कोशिश की है, आसपास तो कहीं पहुंच नहीं पाए, but at the same time he encouraged us to try and realize that when you're listening to music through a musical system, sometimes things get lost. Okay? and how you want to try and improve music systems so that you are able, that loss of communication is minimized. And that's really where the physics of music and the interest of it began, when probably I was 5 or 6 years old. I didn't realize I would go on to pursue it later on as a career, but I was very conscious that there is an aspect which is the acoustic element of music. There is an aspect which is the emotional element of music, and there is an aspect which is uh, the whole proficiency of music presentation, and all of these come together in a musical performance. So it's, from a technical point of view, when you study it, it becomes very interesting to look at different aspects, even though they all contribute to the total experience. And the second point I wanted to clarify was that now I no longer work at NBRC, but work almost entirely at the UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development, also located in New Delhi, where some of my interest in music training, especially the emotional aspect, is something I use in a very different context. And if time permits, I will talk a little bit about it. So back to you.
Sure, my bad. Yeah, I should have done some
You
more
wouldn't know
reading.
about it, so I thought I would just clarify it. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So now getting to the discussion, uh, like you pointed out, music is universal, and this is a line that is, that everyone knows, that everyone says all the time, that music is universal. But what exactly do we mean by music is universal? Is that there is sound and the journey that takes the sound towards music, the notes, the particular frequencies which people hear, notice, recognize, and reproduce these frequencies, and then they're combined, and then the combining of these frequencies together, what this makes sound music. And because this is universal, music is universal. What I also feel is common apart from these objective things is that similar kinds of notes or similar kinds of compositions will incite similar kinds of emotions in different human beings, irrespective of which part of the world they belong to, which is also a factor that makes music universal, more than the traditional listing of seven notes everywhere, etc. So this is one more factor that makes music universal. So would you like to elaborate on the difference between a feeling and emotion? Because as laymen, we don't understand what exactly is a feeling and what exactly is an emotion. We use these as interchangeable words.
Interchangeable. Yeah.
So would you first like to elaborate on what is the difference between music and emotion, and then a little bit about how music impacts emotions? I mean, of course, the rest of the discussion is going to be about that, but just to kickstart for that.
Sure. So let's start with feelings and emotions. And for those of you who might ever have looked this up online or something, feelings are something that you are conscious of. Okay. So you will say, I'm feeling cold or I'm feeling angry, whatever. But emotion is often something that is unconscious also. It can be a strong feeling too, but it can also be unconscious. And therefore, in order to have a feeling, okay, because it's a conscious aspect, there is often an external stimulus that is required. Okay, so somebody said something to you, you heard a loud noise, or you ate something, or whatever. But emotion is something that can be completely internal. Okay. So you're sitting in a quiet room with no stimulus per se around you. It might be dark, but in your mind, you can think of something. Okay. And recalling that whole process could be a piece of music, it could be an experience that you had. It's completely internal, that can give rise to emotion. Okay? So, feeling requires an external stimulus, but emotion can also be generated internally. Okay? Those are two very distinct aspects of between emotion and feeling that people have repeatedly reported in the past. Okay, and and something that we are very conscious of in science is our understanding of all of these aspects. And I bring them up because these are all abstract aspects. Understanding the abstract is always more challenging than understanding the concrete, because the concrete you can characterize very very clearly, length, breadth, depth, or frequency, or whatever. But
Correct.
anything which is abstract is something that is also uh, a perspective that can be provided. Okay, so you might find something very very romantic, and I say it's nice, but I don't find this romantic enough. I find this other piece more romantic. So it's also personal. Okay, and that's why abstraction becomes so difficult to also characterize. But at the same time, abstraction or this personal liking is what makes that experience so much more enjoyable. And at a particular point in time, you want to listen to a particular piece of music because that's the kind of emotion it can arise in you. Now, as you mentioned earlier, one of the reasons that makes music so universal is the fact that, one, music we know is capable of generating emotional states. Feeling, certainly. But even without listening to music, because of a piece of music that you have heard, you can bring back a memory and still have the same state of mind. And that's what we call emotion. And that's why music is certainly associated with emotion. And as we come and talk about hopefully Hindustani classical music, I would also like to talk about why this becomes so special in the context of ragas and Hindustani classical music. But what some of our work was able to show was that when you take pieces of music, and this is where empirical evidence versus what we call anecdotal evidence. Okay, empirical is where you have systematically conducted a study and collected quantitative data from people so that you provide enough information that the whole study can be replicated in another setting. That's empirical data. And the data shows again and again that when you listen to these pieces of music, whether you are born in India, in the United States, in Finland, in Hungary, in Australia, in Africa, you will experience and report back the same emotion, okay, or the same genre of emotions. Okay, even if I don't want to be very specific, because emotion is again something that is very cultural in nature. Okay, so our uh, the labels that we use to report certain emotions are very variable in different parts of the world. But the same, so if I had to be very simple about it, positive versus negative, if I just kept it as simple as that, it's very rare that something which is reported positive in one will be reported negative in the other. Very rare. Okay. And in cognitive science, we increasingly say very rare, because we know with all the experimental work that we do that we can still sample only part of the world. Okay. So based on that sampling of the world is where we come up with our conclusions. So we know that, one, similar responses have been reported. We also know that similar physiological responses have been reported. Okay. By physiological responses, I mean the body responds to it also. Go
Okay.
ahead.
What I would like to ask is, you spoke about empirical evidence, but you didn't tell what anecdotal evidence was.
So anecdotal evidence is, and thanks for pointing that out, is, Kalyani said that she felt this, okay, and then Nandini said that she felt that, or Mukesh said that he experienced this. These are isolated points, okay. We don't know whether the conditions in which you experienced that were the same as the conditions in which Nandini did, and the conditions in which Mukesh did, or the conditions in which Jack did. Okay. All these conditions might have been different. So these are factors that can impact emotion and feeling both. Okay. So when we conduct experiments, we try and control for these factors. to the
Oh,
best of our ability. So, to give you an example, when we conducted our experiments with Hindustani classical ragas, we made everybody see a particular video before they started the experiment. Okay, it was a Tom and Jerry video. Okay.
oh, okay.
Okay. So the idea was you are most people again find that funny. So you're in a similar state of mind when you start the experiment. Okay. So
Understood.
these are challenges that are always there whenever you conduct any experimental work with any acoustic stimuli. Okay, that if you're looking at emotion or feeling which you want to study, you want to try and bring people in the similar state. Okay, because remember, you are interested in studying the brain's response. Okay, but the brain has a lot of stuff going on. Okay, and it's not possible for me to tell you to shut that other stuff off. Nandini's talking about music, but my time is running out. How do I get it to stop? So you're distracted partly by that and partly by something else. So how do I normalize and bring the same state in? Okay. So those are control conditions that you want to set up in an experiment always. So we've set up those control conditions uh, as well as possible within experimental design. And the fact that so many people, and that's where the power of numbers becomes important in empirical evidence. If you have 30 versus 3,000 versus 30,000, your evidence is just getting stronger. So you want to have large numbers with as many controlled conditions as possible in terms of reporting that. And that's where the empirical evidence becomes valuable. So most of our work is under reasonably good. We have at least 1,000 responses in each of our experimental reportings. And we've tried to do them also online so we can get more of the variability of people, not just in a lab setting with a soundproof room and all of that. And that's why the fact that this is now in fact being even replicated in other parts of the world, that we now feel fairly confident of these settings even though they are with a small bunch of stimuli. Okay, so the two things which we seem to have established now is that one, music is universal. We have been able to experience the universal aspect of it for Hindustani classical ragas only through internet self-report studies. Okay, a dream study that I still want to do is when people in different parts of the world are actually in an MRI scanner and listening to the music, and I can see their brain activity is also similar to what we have seen from people from India. Okay, so that's a dream study that I still want to do. But other studies have also shown that when you listen to music, and this might be any kind of music, you can take people from other parts of the world, and their self reports will be the same. Their galvanic skin response, okay, it's something that you can measure in terms of the skin conductance. Okay,
Hmm.
that is similar when you listen to music. Heart rate variability is similar. So these are physiological parameters. Okay, and therefore there is now converging evidence from multiple studies across the world that music is universal. That I think is no longer debated anymore. Okay, the element of universality, of course, is always tricky, but I think we can reasonably say that music is universal. And I think that the evidence of that for me is when musicians play across the world and you don't know them, you've never heard them, but you enjoy the music just as much.
Correct. Correct. Understood. So now taking this ahead, in specifically with respect to Hindustani classical music, it's based on rags. It is raga music. The fundamental concept in Hindustani classical music is rag. Now, as a musician or as somebody who listens and learns music, rag is a very abstract concept to understand, or even to rag is a very, you can't define rag. You can't tell somebody what a rag is, but as you grow or as you take your talim, you kind of understand what a rag could be. And for the purposes of performance or for the purposes of listening to music, rag, we can loosely define it as a set of notes which are placed one after the other in a particular fashion. Now, this is actually a very uh, ill or very incomplete definition of rag, I feel. because rag is more than that. So rag also comes from a Sanskrit dhatu called so ranjayate iti raga. So something that entertains you is also rag. So rag is also mood, etc. But one more interpretation of rag is that rag is a guide to creating melodious music. So not everyone is, not everyone is bright enough or original enough to come up with magnificent composition. So when you have a guideline, you can just follow the guideline, and then whatever you sing will be proper. And it can also be replicated, it can also be imitated, etc. So rag is also that sometimes. So there are so many different things that rag is. But in respect of cognitive neurosciences, what do you think is the role of this concept of rag when it comes to researching on these particular points as to how music impacts emotion?
The part about a raga that we found most exciting from a cognitive science exploration was the fact that a raga is created or conceptualized to generate a certain emotion. Okay. Now, from the literature or whatever the historical literature that's available, that says that when a particular king or the Lord wanted to feel a certain emotion, they would go to the musician and say, "This is how I want to feel. Okay, make me feel this way." Okay, it's almost like you tell on demand now that this is how I want to get into this emotional state. And that's where the power of the music, and you're simply amazed by what the knowledge that the musicians would have known already to know, that when I combine a set of notes, this is the emotion I'm going to create. Okay, and that's really the brilliance of what they knew, which I think we're still struggling to understand, because now we have actually a structure in which to investigate this. But what if we didn't have such a structure? For that, I need to have uh, been practicing maybe distinct notes and said, oh, when I'm practicing this note, this is how I'm feeling. So there's a conscious mapping that's going on between what I'm singing and what I'm experiencing. And if you go to any musician and ask them, uh, what's your purpose? And they will say increasingly, I just want to create the same emotional experience in my listener that I experience myself. Okay. He or she does not have to have any knowledge of the ragas or the notes. It's a musical emotional experience. Okay. That's what I want to create. And I want to create it using rhythms, melodies, which are melodies are essentially combinations of notes. Rhythms are the notion of regularity that you want to bring in terms of presentation. And that's something which actually tells you that musicians had a fantastic perception of patterns. Okay.
Hmm.
That patterns play an important part in the life of human beings. Okay. And repeated presentations of patterns is actually very calming. Okay, is very relaxing.
Hmm.
So if you look at a lot of the patterns we have in our own lives, you listen to the music, you listen to your pulse. They are all regular. They are not irregular. So somewhere that
Hmm.
level of regularity has a sense of balance, grounding, or relaxation. Okay. And that's a concept that they used enormously also in generating emotion. So the fact that they are able to combine certain notes, and I think over a period of time, they probably came up with the idea that I need a minimum of 5 notes to be able to create a raga or to create that emotion. Okay. And
Hmm.
for us, the fact that that same bunch of 5 notes with varied rhythm, you know, in like in an alap or in a gat, which is something which probably you might be able to explain even better than me. One where the underlying rhythm is not very obvious, which we call more arrhythmic, okay, but in another where the rhythm is more conscious, okay, where you can begin to tap to it, okay. This itself can generate different emotions was a very, very powerful idea. And so they just used those five notes and presented them in, let's for simplicity stick to only two formats now. And they found that it could start building an emotion and then take it up to a height. Okay, so that emotion can continue to build. So the same raga in alap could possibly be calming, but once you introduce the rhythm, can actually become exciting or happy or joyful. So it's building up the mood, like you say, as they go on. But it's the same set of notes. The notes are not changing, but the way they are used combined with the rhythm is what's making this. And the fact that such an acoustic feature can generate such differences in emotional states is what makes ragas such powerful stimuli. I still think that we have just started to explore them. There is a couple of lifetimes of work available to be able to completely exploit and understand this. And I hope there will be more people who will go on to do this. But we know that the ragas are a unique piece of stimuli that can be used, especially in cognitive science experiments, in very unique ways to understand emotion and also emotion variability. How do these nuances change amongst people? How does usage of one particular note, you might have a komal ni or a komal re, and one musician uses it more than the other, and then you say नहीं ये सुनने से ना ज्यादा दर्द होता है. It's like you feel it more strongly. So clearly there are associations between notes also that you can try and dissect out through good experimentation. So I think we are just at the beginning of it, but I think that's one of the places where raga music has so much power in trying to understand emotion. So for us, that's really uh, the crux of the matter, that you have a finite set of notes which in different rhythmic formats can be used to generate specific emotions, to put it very simply.
So this the particular point we talk about right now about rhythm, which is exactly as it is reflected in Hindustani classical music as the concept of tal. Now, Taal, of course, I mean, by definition, like by bookish definition, it's a rhythmic cycle with particular number of beats, having particular bowls, etc. But there is so much variation within that as well. So, for example, we have like four Taals that I know, which have 14 beats. So, we have Dhamar of 14 beats, we have Deep Changi of 14 beats, we have Jhumra of 14 beats, we have Ada Chotal of 14 beats. But all these are very different in structure, in nature, etc. So I would like to share this very my very favorite example of how the same rag can, incite different emotions depending on which lay you sing it at. So in Hindustani music, you also have this concept of lay, vilambit, madhya, and dhrit, and then there are madhya vilambit, dhrit madhya, etc., and ati dhrit and ati vilambit as well. So the example which I would like to share is from Rag Maru Bihag. Now, Maru Bihar essentially is a very pleasant and, it's a very jolly kind of a rag. It's actually a little playful as well. So I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll just sing a bit of Maru Bihar. So the notes are something like this. Ni sa ga ma pa ga ma ga re sa re sa ni sa da ni sa ma ga ni sa pa ma ga re sa. Now, when the same thing, and these are my favorite examples because these are both from film music. so everyone will be able to relate to what's happening. So one very famous song in Maru Bihag is
तुम तो प्यार हो सजना, तुम तो प्यार हो.
so this has a kind of fast moving, like it has a fast moving background tal, but the same set of notes when it becomes beete na bitai rehna, it suddenly becomes a very sad and kind of longing kind of a song. So
बीते ना बिताए रहना, बिरहा की जाए रहना, बीते ना बिताए रहना.
so this was one
Beautiful, beautiful.
yes.
But that's where you laid out already one design for a very interesting cognitive science experiment to do. Okay, is you take the same raga, like you said, and play it in our experiments. We played it in just two, uh, two modes, But here, like you said, you can play it in Madhya Laya, okay, as well as in Vilambit, and see what the difference is in the emotional states that people report. Okay, that would be fascinating to see both at the level of reporting as well as even looking at say skin response or physiological measures, okay, before we even take it to imaging. Okay,
Hmm.
another factor which I think you brought out really well, which could also be interesting to see, is what if I first presented just the notes by themselves, then in the second round of the experiment, to the notes, I added the semantics to it also.
Yes.
Remember, words by themselves also have the potential to generate emotions, right? Okay.
Yes.
So, viraha, is it the note, or is it viraha, which is the underlying word that characterizes a certain feeling of emotion already? Okay. Does the emotional experience change the moment you add it? Okay.
Hmm.
And if we do careful tracking of this, and we can do a combination of what is called EEG, electroencephalograph, where timing information is captured really well.
Hmm. Hmm.
So in functional imaging, what you will know is which regions of the brain were participating. Okay. But you will not know when, what happened, to how to capture it. For that, you need the EEG. Okay.
Hmm.
So if you can do an EEG fMRI combination, okay, you already know, and we can do these experiments now. I have colleagues in NBRC who do that. Is you localize the brain area, and you also do an EEG. So you can say this. So on that same piece, the first time it is played, it is without the bowl, the alap, the words are not there. And in the second piece, and you must really sing it exactly the same way, is
Hmm.
to sing it with the word too. And we look at the strength of the emotional response, so that we will also know that the emotional response builds once you add the words onto it. And so that's really some ways where we can begin to understand how emotion gets enhanced, and which, as a consequence of which, and something that in most cases musicians will already know. Okay, this is more a confirmation of what they already know, but sometimes there might be some surprises too.
Yes.
Okay. And those are the ones that will be interesting to capture. That, oh, I was expecting this here and this is what happened. Okay. And that's always what becomes interesting and sometimes provides that element of novelty. So I think you are already very well set up to start planning and designing some cognitive science experiments. Maybe after this uh, new set of collaborations that I've made with you, we can start to do this together.
I will be most honored to do that.
We can
Uh,
start with three ragas and try and do that and see a pattern if possible.
So before we move on to the next topic, I would like you to highlight that one portion where you said the patterns in rhythms which any human looks forward to, and I feel what that reflects. I mean, how that reflects in music is of course the tal, and in any concert or anything where there are a lot of people or even a few number of people, when the sum arrives, when the first beat arrives again, the response that you get, the tabla player, he doesn't know what the singer is going to sing, but as the sum nears, he will start playing some additional bowls, he will start putting in some bhari in the bowls. The audience will also kind of get, anxious कि अभी क्या होने वाला है. And then when the sum arrives and the singer will or the instrumentalist will hit the sum properly, then there will be a bhava immediately, because he has exactly hit onto the expectations of the audience. So there's
Absolutely.
wow. So I thought that this exactly, or this reflects the science that you explained that reflects in practicality in the shape of a sum.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, it's almost like something you experience in real life. It's something you and I experienced when we met each other for the first time, and this was all online, and we hit the same frequency, right? So I was saying things that completely resonated with you, and you were saying things that completely resonated with me. As a consequence, the experience generated a positive emotion. You and I did not realize it, right? This is a good example of how an internal state got generated. So next time Kalyani reached out to me or I reached out to Kalyani, my response was almost immediate because I have a memory of a previous positive experience. Okay. So patterning or often gives rise to what we call closure, okay, which is often typically uh, something that the brain is expecting. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. And it's what helps the brain navigate life also. Okay. So you
Hmm.
expect that when I step out, when I get into the lift, if I meet somebody new and I say hello, the person will also say hello back. Okay. So that's expectation being met and the brain is at peace. Now I might say hello and the other person will turn their face away. And then you are like, what happened? Okay. So that's the dissonant state that gets created. So that's when the brain gets distracted and starts trying to find what is it that took it into dissonance.
Hmm.
Consonance, on the other hand, which is what patterning leads to. And these are typically almost like ways of saying that, you have reached the same frequency or an integral multiple of the same frequency, okay, is when the brain finds reward, okay, and it's as if that community of now just the musician and the tabla player both now envelops the entire audience, okay. So the person who has not caught on to this sum is looking around. Ki, what
Yes.
happened? What happened? How can I become part of this experience? Because it's an infectious bond, invisible bond that gets created in that whole musical setting. Okay. But somewhere, I think what we might miss is this happened because the tal was something that the musician and the tabla player both knew, the percussionist. That common knowledge of the tal is what helped them build this common experience. Okay. Just like when you and I meet, we start out with arrhythmic modes. Okay. As the conversation progresses, we start going on to that consonance mode. So therefore, the tala is a very, very important factor here because that's the binding factor. If that doesn't happen, the reaching of the sum together is not going to happen. And I
Correct.
think therefore this is primarily the percussion really comes in when you are in that patterning mode. You know, when in the gath, in the alap, you are not into the patterning mode. You are showing the what are the intricacies of the raga. So that point in time, you are not looking for that patterning. It's more these are the beautiful things the raga can do, the embellishments and all of it. You know, sort of demonstrating it. And so the whole concept of patterning is used very interestingly in Hindustani music to create an emotional experience. So you go through an emotion experience journey. Okay, you started by wanting to feel calm or maybe just romantic or longing, and then you say, so what's the extreme experience of this emotion now, and then I'll take you through that
Hmm.
also. So that's why it's a very enriching experience, because you have experienced a myriad of emotions, but they're all in the same, typically often in the same group. Okay, you don't keep going back and forth. You don't do sad, happy, angry. You don't do that. You take one genre and then you build into that typically.
Correct. So I think we are moving towards the penultimate topic of the discussion, which is thoughts. Now, your papers also talk about thoughts. There are a lot of other books, etc., articles which also talk about thoughts. The word thought actually catches my attention because thought in Marathi, it means, you know, sometimes it means shringar also. So, for example, um, if somebody's daughter is getting married, they would say, आमच्या लेकीचं थाटात लग्न झालं.
Oh.
कि ठाट में शादी हुई. तो ये ठाट अलग है उस ठाट से. But I feel that there is some underlying factor which, so thought is basically everything. Thought means that, oh, the wedding hall was beautiful, amazing decoration. The bride was wearing very expensive and very beautiful clothes, and there were a lot of people, and the food was excellent, etc. Now that's what you call a thought. So I feel that somewhere the concept of thought in music also matches this thought, is because a lot of things come together and they are all making that one event a very magnificent one. So these are all very similar things that are coming together, and they are often, so for example, if in a wedding you have jalebi and chocolate, you will not relish it, you will not appreciate it. So with the jalebi, you want rabdi only. So even with the thoughts, I feel it's the same, that the rags belonging to one particular thought will show similar characteristics or will go well with each other. So I kind of sometimes differ on this concept of how many thoughts to recognize, because in Hindustani classical music and in Carnatic classical music, the notion of thought is a little different. In Carnatic classical music, it kind of goes closer to the concept of scale. But in Hindustani classical music, whether to call it a group of rags or a classification of rags, we don't know. And more importantly, earlier there were many thoughts in existence. About 70 to 75 thoughts were in existence. Pandit Bhatkhande combined those thoughts and classified those thoughts into 10. So your paper also talks about it. So could you please elaborate that for the viewers of musical?
Sure. So the idea that we were interested in trying to explore or understand was how Bhatkandeji might have arrived at that notion of thought. Okay, what might have prompted him? Okay. So one thing I guess which probably people are familiar with is to know that if you look at all the Shuddha and Komal Swaras and the Tivrama, there are typically 12 notes that you have. Okay. And from there, each thought has, however, is organized around a heptatonic scale. So each thought is characterized by 7 notes. right? And he's organized them into 10 of them. Okay. And the idea is that all the ragas that belong to these, each to a particular thought, use at least 5 of the 7 notes which characterize that thought. Okay. Notice I use the word at least. Okay. It could be more than that also. So already that is beginning to put you in a certain set of, and we try and call these now less as notes and more as tonic intervals, because we are very conscious that almost any time a musician is playing, it is the tanpura is there at the back. So you are making the note is with respect to the sa of that scale. Okay, so that interval or the relationship it has with that sa is always there. So we talk of these therefore as intervals. Okay, so you are already within a thought, uh, meandering amongst these set of tonic intervals only. Okay, and we were trying to understand why that explanation might have come about. And here we found something interesting. Okay, that when you take the ratios of komal versus shuddha swaras. Okay, now there is these are in Western music are called major and minor notes. Okay. And there is a large body of research from various parts of the world, from some from India, mostly from the West, is major notes generate positive emotions, minor notes generate more, I don't like to call them negative, but planative emotions. Okay.
Sorry, I missed the word.
Planative.
Okay, what does that mean?
जैसे कि विरह, तो दुख से भरा, but I don't feel that music से कोई दुख होता है, दुख को समझा पाता है, but I don't believe that music is negative. Okay, and that's why I avoid using that word. Though in most technical literature, they end up, whenever they have talked about the work that we do, they end up talking about positive and negative, simply to put it as sort of on two ends of a spectrum, more along there. So when we were trying to understand this organization, we found that if you take the ratio of Shuddha versus Komal Swaras and move around, okay, there is a thought which has only Shuddha Swaras, okay, combinations of them. Then as you're going down and you're introducing different Komal Swaras, you can set up something like a ratio of Shuddha versus Komal. Right. So you can actually set up a ratio of the Shuddha Swaras and Komal Swaras, the tonic intervals. We denote them by small m and capital M. And as you vary that ratio, you can begin to see how the underlying emotion associated with that thought begins to change. Okay, there is a very nice mapping. So our own belief, therefore, is that Bhatkhande ji probably kept emotion as central. Okay, and ragas that had similar sets of notes generated similar emotions were brought together. Okay, and use that as a means to set up that circle of thoughts. Because right now there are no clear explanations as to why that circle of thoughts is there. Okay, and that's what we put out as an idea, and it's very interesting as you go down the circle of thoughts. You can see, so in the figure that you see, you will see red and shades of red, okay, which start going towards light blue, then dark blue, and so on. Okay, so Bilawal, Khamaj, even Kalyan tend to be in the positive set of emotions. You go to Tori, Purvi, they are plaintive sets of emotions. Bhairavi is a little on the edge, just as is Marwa. Okay, so they have cusps. Okay, they are on the borders of where the you're going from positive to plaintive in terms of thoughts, and then you can go within the thought itself and look at the different ragas within them, and they could probably get classified too. But all of these can get characterized in turn by emotional states. So almost all the ragas that are sitting in thoughts that have primarily positive emotions associated with them, you'll find all those ragas primarily generate positive emotions. Yeah, musicians should, we now want musicians to collaborate with us to try and see whether our explanation of why the thoughts might be organized this way is actually valid. Okay, and you're one of the few people who has actually initiated this discussion. So if you find this a valid explanation, maybe we should think of doing another episode together where we will pick up ragas from specific thoughts, maybe take four as an example instead of taking all 10, of them, and picking up maybe two or three ragas from uh, the extremely positive to the extremely plaintive, and the two at the cusps, where that transition is happening. And for us, the most interesting part is the transition begins to happen because of the Komal ray. Okay. The Komal ray is the point where the transition begins to happen. And when you do what is called a regression analysis, okay, so you do some statistical analysis to show that which of these tonic intervals is the best predictor of what the underlying emotion might be. What we do find is if there is a Komal ray in the raga, the chances of it being classified as plaintive is more than 85%. Okay, because we also find that in renditions where any raga where the Komal ray is used, the use of the base sa also increases. Okay, it is almost as if the Komal ray is introduces so much dissonance that you want to keep going back to the sa to say that no, I'm at peace, things are okay, things are okay. So it's like, when you are stressed, you might eat something that you like more and more. कि नहीं ठीक हो जाएगा, ठीक हो जाएगा, when you're sitting, waiting in a hospital or something. There's an anxious state. You're waiting for a result or something. Okay, at that state, that's the impression that we get with the use of the Komal ray and the base sa. Okay, so that's something that we would. These are based on analyses of ragas that we have done. What we would like musicians to do is to come back and verify this for us. We have worked with only some pieces of music, whether they see this in their pieces of music too, and then possibly provide their explanations of why they think they do it. And that's where I think a new dialogue will begin to start.
So now coming to the characteristics of different thoughts. From your study, I will play uh, from That Purvi. There is a recording of Rag Shri that I studied. Shri being as anxious and the feeling of longing that it creates, I feel a similar thing happens with Purya Dhanashri also. And even talking from a very technical musical perspective, sometimes Shri and Purya Dhanashri can, sometimes while singing Shri, it happens with many vocalists, is that they kind of come towards Purya Dhanashri because they are so close to each other, the notes are so common. So, Shri we heard. Uh, I'll just sing a bit of Purya Dhanashri, not more than half a minute.
ga ni re ga ma re ga ma ga ma ga ni re sa sa ga ma da pa dha ma pa ga ma re ga ni re ni ma ga ma ga ni re sa.
Beautiful.
Oh, Purya Dhanashri. So, Thaat, Puri, and one more example that I would like to bring in here is of Purya Dhanashri and Purya Kalyan. Now, Purya
Okay.
Kalyan and Purya Dhanashri have the difference of only one note. Is that
Okay.
in Purya Dhanashri is Komal, Dha in Purya Kalyan is Shuddh, and which is what classifies Purya Kalyan into Thaat Marwa instead of Purvi.
Oh,
So,
that is beautiful. But Marwa sits in between Purvi and Kalyan.
yes,
So it acts as the bridge.
yes. So, there is one recording of Ustad Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Sahab, where he has actually said that sometimes people think that Puriya Kalyan is Puriya with Pancham, but it's actually Kalyan with a Komal Ray. So, so that is very interesting to understand. So Puriya Kalyan goes something like this. Da ne re ga pa pa ga ma da ni pa. So this particular phrase of Kalyan, ga ma da ni pa ga ma da ni pa.
pa ma ga ma re ga ma ga re sa.
So I said, I did not know this statement about Bade Ghulam Ali Khan ji. But for me, it is one of the best ratifications of our hypothesis. Now, Kalyan is primarily positive notes.
Yes.
Kalyan Thak. Okay. Just the introduction of the Komal Ray, okay, is bringing in that little element of dissonance, which is pushing it into Marwa.
Yes.
Okay. So that one tonic interval of Ray, Komal Ray, has so much power that it can bring in that element of some dissonance which pushes it towards Marwa. Okay. So I was just looking at the diagram as we were talking, and I was like, oh, this is a beautiful example. I did not know this existed. But I think it would be really nice to think of a follow-up discussion at some point in time, just focused on the circle of thoughts, where we
100.
can take 6 or 7 examples, and you can demonstrate uh, as we go along them explaining. So it will be very interesting to see if there is any example at all where something from, say, Bilawal to Tori completely exists because they are at two ends of it. Is there ever an instance that something is partly Bilawal, partly Tori? I would think at this point in time, my hypothesis would be no. Okay,
Yeah.
I will let you do the background research to determine whether that is true or not. Okay, and then we can discuss this. But this is where this will become an interesting discussion and collaboration, that how the results of what our proposed understanding of the circle of thoughts is actually matches or mirrors what you see as performers when you are, performing these rags. That I think would be fascinating for us to see, because we came into it completely from a analysis and patterning angle. You are coming at from a performer's angle, but how well this match would be very nice to see.
Yes. So now moving to the final topic of discussion, which is music therapy. Now, what made me put this topic in was we have discussed this before also, that there is so much there is so much lack of information, and there is abundance of misinformation
Oh yes.
about music therapy, about what music therapy is. So we will try to address uh, the magic of music therapy, and whether, although magic, it's true. I mean, like I said in the beginning, this is too good to believe. This is too good to be true. So, so uh, I would like you to elaborate on what music therapy is, and what are the misconceptions about it, and how we can actually put it into practice and use the science to the benefit of the humanity.
So it's a very big question, and I don't think I'm competent to answer all parts of it. I will try and answer what I can and what I know. Okay. One, because of its ability to impact emotion so strongly, there is now, in the last, say, about 15, 20 years, been a lot of interest in using emotion for emotion related issues. Okay. So it could be to teach people emotion regulation. It's sometimes even to teach people the differences between emotional states. Okay. So, and some of our interest has over there has been in the context of autism. Okay, where because children with autism process music better than they process speech, we use music as a stimulus to teach them multiple things. And sometimes we find that even communicating with them in a musical format is better. Instead of saying, घूमने चलते हैं और तुमने नहाया कि नहीं, instead you say, but the child will not even look at you, you say, तुमने नहाया कि नहीं, या चलो घूमने चले. Suddenly that whole format of presentation, which we call sung speech, with no training at all, everybody has some notion of how to sing. Even if parents have used it in that format, it is of interest to the child and they attend to the stimulus. So for all of us to be able to respond, we need to attend. So we have to pay attention. Only then can we respond. And we find that children with autism respond well when it's presented in a musical format. And so when you want them to learn something new, you present it in a musical format or a sung speech format. We also know that kids with autism love predictability or rhythm. Okay. What is they find difficult to navigate in the everyday world is when the response is different from what was expected. So you tell them do this and this will happen. Do this and this will happen. But do this and something else will happen is what they are not prepared for. So you remember that example I told you about, you smile at somebody and the person will smile back at you. But if you smile at the person doesn't smile back at you, you and I will just say, there are people who uska mood kharab hoga or didn't feel up to it and didn't respond. But a child with autism will get very upset because this breaks his or her set of how to process the world. Okay. Now, to arrive at this conclusion, okay, we did 3 experiments. Not only we, people in different parts of the world have repeated this experiment and found similar responses. Okay. And therefore, we are able to say that sung speech is effective in communicating with children with autism. Remember, I am saying effective and communicating. We also find this is more effective when the child has more autism symptoms. Autism symptoms are also on a spectrum. Okay, you might have some symptoms and you have very strong symptoms also. So there's an inverse correlation there. So these are nuances that we have come to know because of detailed experimentation. So after this, listening to this video, I would not want you to go back and say, oh, if we use music, we can cure autism. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you can use this as a possible intervention to help communication in kids with autism. And we all know it works in a number of cases, but it might not work in some cases. So the part where one is a little concerned these days is that there is a lot of hypothesis or discussion that uh, music is, especially Hindustani music, many of them we now can characterize, and that's where I studied. Not all of them showed calm states when you listen to them. Okay. Many of them did, but not all. Now we know that also anxiety is an increasing issue because of the stress in the world, the unpredictability of the world. Now, if again on this basis we draw a conclusion that, oh, if I make everybody listen to Hindustani music, they will start feeling calm. That's by no means what we want to say. What we want to say is there are systematic pieces of music that have been investigated, or systematic ragas that have been investigated and have shown to be calming. If I want to use 6 ragas for my work, maybe I should do a small study first to try and see whether these ragas actually are calming. One, can I support this with physiological measurement whereby I monitor blood pressure or anxiety levels as this process is happening and build data to support what I want to say. Okay. Rather than just doing, so one way to do it is to do blood pressure measurement at the beginning, blood pressure measurement after, okay, and say, in this case, the blood pressure dropped. How do I know that this is only in the case of this raga and not any piece of music? You need to make that case by trying different sets of ragas. So the whole gamut of how to arrive at this using a rigorous scientific method is critical before we begin to use music in music art therapy, okay, or for as therapy, because there are so many factors that are out of our control. You don't at any one point in time want to make the system even more difficult. What if a particular piece of music has a sense of memory from the past, in turn can give rise to more emotional disturbance? Then you will get into a bigger issue of trying to handle with it. But given that we have good methods of investigating this now, a small but well characterized study can certainly begin to make its way into the field of music therapy. And I think we are ready for it. What we need to do is to find the right people with training, and this is the part which I think is actually the most exciting. We are now in an age of science where single science does not work, and nor is it applicable in the world. It is this transdisciplinary science where people from different disciplines come together, come up with a good study, and take the results of their study into the world, is what we need today. Okay, I can do pure research in music, but it is this collaboration with Kalyani ji, which will tell me something that can be useful to people in the medical fraternity. Okay. And I think we need to recognize that and be very open to the fact that some of these results will change as you go along. Okay. So you tell people also that my little research has shown this. Would you like to be part of it? We take what is called informed consent. Okay. And say, would you like to be part of it and help us track it? And most people are very willing to do that because one of the good things about music is it is non invasive. You are not injecting something or making people eat something. Okay. And that I think is what we need today. Okay. So we know in terms of anxiety, blood pressure, even stress, music is beginning to play a role. But I think the scientific rigor is critical before it becomes therapy. Okay. Right now, these are observational, even anecdotal findings. We need to support them by these unique collaborations to start making it into therapy, but it has tremendous potential. That there is no doubt about. Absolutely no doubt about. So it's important to use this potential carefully and judiciously. I'll just stop there.
All right, that was really insightful, and I'm sure that viewers of musical, at least who are watching this, will will keep safe distance from the rumors and will believe in what is scientifically proven. I am putting the links of both, or rather all three of Nandini ma'am's papers in the description, and I highly, highly, highly recommend all of you all to go and read those papers. I understand they could be a little technical, so I'm also putting the link to the podcast where she and a couple of more of her co-authors have explained or talked about these papers, and which is very, very interesting to know. So I highly recommend you all to read the paper and hear a podcast. And now coming to the closing part of the interview, thank you so much, Nandini ma'am, once again for agreeing to do this and giving your time for this recording. And thank you so much for guiding me also through all these topics and coming up with this beautiful, beautiful session. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Kalyani. Full credit to you for coming up with the idea, for wanting to take this forward. For me, it is prasad. Okay, it is when somebody can appreciate and take joy from some scientific work that is done and even draw reward from it. I think even for that one person, that study was worth doing. Okay. Well, and I actually hope that given that I've already learned so much from you on one episode, that maybe we will go on to collaborate to do a scientific study together and then do an episode on that.
I will be, I will be most honored to do that.
So let's plan that, and I think it might not be very difficult to do it.
100%.
So let's keep talking and see how we can try and make that happen.
100%. And
The
on
very
that,
best to you.
yes, and on that note, a very happy third birthday to musical.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very
And
happy day to musical.
yes, and many more to come. Let's hope.
Absolutely. Take care and keep up this wonderful work you are doing.
Right. Bye bye. If you all are
Bye
new, make sure to click that like button over there. Put your thoughts, comments, and suggestions in the comment section below. Tell us how you found this episode because your opinions is something that matters the most. Share this video with all of those you think need to see this and subscribe to my channel for more such content. See you again on Saturdays. Bye bye.
bye. Bye bye. Thanks.